I'd rather create something that others criticise than create nothing and criticise others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 51 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Having founded venues and lived across multiple countries, Bonnie shares insights on their differing legal frameworks, venue ideation, creation and culture. We discuss how to deal with tall poppy syndrome and other cultural struggles in forging your own path, in your career and ultimately, life. I actually worked at Canvas, one of the venues that Bonnie founded in Brisbane, and that was fun to hear come out in the episode. Sit back, relax, and as always, enjoy. Hello and welcome to the show, Bonnie.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us today. As you know, the first question I like to ask is, what's your crazy hospitality story?
The entire story. Everything about this industry is crazy. God, I honestly wouldn't be able to pick one. There's been camels, fire breathers, after parties, green rooms, midgets, all sorts of craziness.
Yep.
I mean, probably the wildest time I had was in Ibiza. That was great fun. Running a bar out there and clubbing all day and night, and then running a bar. I honestly don't have a specific story. Everything's just been mad.
It's when everything is just, it is crazy. It's all going to blur into this one thing. That's just what the industry is.
It is.
The whole thing's crazy.
It's a mad whirlwind of memories and stories. It's great.
I like to ask next, Bonnie, why you do what you do.
Why I do what I do? Well, I mean, the basics would be I love food and drink, I suppose. I love people. I could never imagine myself doing a day job where I'm sat at a desk all day long.
I totally get
not
that.
interacting with people. It's such a variable industry. You know, you don't know what each day is going to throw at you. There's a new challenge every single day. You know, whether it's a difficult customer or a fabulous customer or the electricity going out in the middle of service and having to deal with it, or a food critic coming in, or every day has a different challenge. And I think that's what's really exciting. I could never sit down to a mundane day-to-day same old groundhog sort of experience. The people I work with and I meet, the stories that you hear, because you deal with different people every single day, it's so interesting and fun. And when you're passionate about the basic topic of your industry, then I think it's easy to do what you do and try and do it well.
The common denominator I usually find from this question is around providing an experience, it's around excitement, and it's around stories. They're the sorts of things that usually come out of that answer, and it's interesting to hear you say those sorts of things as well, which is really cool.
Well, I'm glad I'm on the right track.
Well, obviously you've done well so far, and there's plenty more on your journey. So I'm obviously incredibly interested in what's really driven you to build what you've built so far and what you are building. You said before, people normally ask you how you came to do what you do.
Yes.
And I like to designate a portion of the episode coming up for listeners to find out about how you came to do what you do, even what you do now, and then later we'll get into some bigger conversation again.
Okay.
So how did you come to do what you do?
I guess, I suppose a lot of people would say this, but I sort of fell into the industry. When you finish school, I don't know if it's a thing here, but in the UK, everyone's encouraged to take a gap year. And, those are expensive, and you leave school and you have to go and earn some money to go off traveling around the world for a year. A lot of people fall into the hospitality industry, and I decided that I didn't want to stay in London. I went down to Newquay, stupidly, because it's packed with everyone trying to get a job and I had no experience. So I ended up changing bed sheets in a youth hostel, which was pretty disgusting.
Well, we're going to start somewhere.
I know. You do. So yeah, I won't
that's
go
got a
into too much
story for
detail.
sure. Oh, there was a story, I think it was even episode 4, where we talked about the sort of things people have to do as glassies, and that's rough. That's rough.
I know. I've got so much respect for my dishwashers and my glassies. Those people are the people.
Oh, yeah. But you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Sometimes literally.
No, you can't.
And that's
literally
part
and
of what we
metaphorically.
do. Both.
And it's what
exactly.
makes a good boss, I think. So I was down in Newquay, changing these bed sheets, and then at night I'd go and sit in the bar and watch the boys bartend. It was very much a boys' club. And every night I'd be like, please, I really don't want to be doing the bed sheets anymore. I want a 10 bar. And they were like, no, very boys clubby. And then one night, one of the bartenders cut his thumb really badly, and 2 of them had to rush out the back. And so I just jumped behind the bar and started pouring beers. I've never made a cocktail in my life. And they were kind of weird, wacky cocktails, like big flaming Lamborghinis and Blue Lagoons and God knows what. But I just got behind the bar and started doing it. And then one of the guys from out back came back onto the bar and looked at me. And I was like, well, it's me or no one.
Yeah.
He was like, all right, you can stay. So I stayed behind the bar singing drinks all night. And then at the end of the night, then you did all right. We'll give you another shift tomorrow. And I just fell in love with it. I thought it was so fascinating, you know, the pressure of all these dockets coming in and having to use your brain to think about all these different bizarre cocktails I was making, setting things on fire. And like it wasn't a great bar, but it was just so much fun. And the people I got to meet and just how much fun that everyone was having behind the bar. Then I got back to London after the season finished and went off on my gap year. When I came back, I was my ideas of going to university were just, I'd never been really that committed to it. And I decided to go and work in a bar for a little bit longer. Then just the hospitality clause got into me and opportunities presented themselves and I took them. And next minute I went from being like toe in the water to over my head and loving it. And these opportunities just kept getting presented to me and suddenly here I am, 32, and I've never done anything else.
But what was the point in which you decided you wanted to start owning venues?
I was given an amazing opportunity by a really fantastic company in the UK at a really young age. And I think it was because I spoke a very small amount of Spanish. And my boss had purchased this bar in Ibiza. And he came into this is a bit of a crazy story, actually. I was working behind the bar one night at this bar. And the owner of the company came in. And he sat at the bar with the the CFO, I think it was. And they were sat there talking and like, we just need someone that needs Spanish, blah, blah, blah. And I jokingly was just sort of messing around with them, started speaking a bit of Spanish to them. They were like, you speak Spanish? I was like, very small little.
Yeah, un poco.
It's like, well, you can go. Pretty much. It's like, right, what are you doing tomorrow? It was pretty much the next day. I was working.
Yeah.
So he went over and had a chat with my manager of that venue. Came back over and said, go to Ibiza tomorrow. I need you to go with Kevin and Rick and you're going to go and translate for them. I was like, okay, sure. So I went home.
You had to know enough to translate.
I was like, Mum, I'm going to Ibiza. Like, okay. So next day I went out to Ibiza and just hung out with them for a few days while they looked at this bar that they'd bought and, ended up going and meeting with the lawyers and having to translate all this like legal Spanish, which I've never studied in my life. So I was just like, this is crazy. Anyway, on the way home, Rick got a phone call and then came over to me and said, hey, how do you feel about spending the season out here? I was only 20 I would have been. And I'd only ever waited tables and just started bartending for this company.
Yep.
Just started. Like, it was a really high-end cocktail company. So, you have to actually take an exam to get onto the bar. So I didn't really know what I was doing, but they threw me this amazing lifeline and, they said, don't freak out too much. We'll be right there with you.
Yeah.
Anything you need. So they've got this phenomenal team, like head bartenders and, like I said, CFOs and directors and this, that and the other. And so I just sort of said yes and moved to Ibiza for the summer. And they put a lot of trust and a lot of faith in me, but they were also incredibly supportive and I learned a lot very quickly.
I bet.
Very quickly. After the season finished in Ibiza, so I was there for nearly a year, but I don't know if you know much about Ibiza. When the season finishes, it shuts down. The whole island stops. So they closed the bar. Most of the bars are closed from October through to April or May every year. So when that finished, packed down, and they sent me off to Chamonix to go and work in their boutique hotel, part of the same group up there, and I did that.
By that time, you're, knowing what you're doing there, you've obviously learned a lot.
Still learning a lot. Like, there was...
We're always learning.
Yeah, of course. But in Ibiza, I didn't have sort of a manager there teaching me what to do. I had a crew overseas, and then there was a few different managers that came out over the course of the season.
Did you find it difficult then going to somewhere else where you'd already started to develop your own systems over that season, and then someone's trying to retrain you to what they do?
Not so much. I mean, because it was already such an established company, a lot of the systems were already there. So it was just about learning the way that they do things. So a lot of
they
their
gave
systems,
those to you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So-
very handy.
Yeah, super handy, super handy. You know, obviously the climate was rather different.
Yes.
And it was a very different style of venue. I went from having, like, you know, there was this crazy cocktail bar in the Old Puerto de Ibiza to this beautiful boutique hotel in the French Alps. So 2 completely different styles. So it was very interesting. And then I met a boy, Tom, my business partner, was also partner. He happened to be a guest in the hotel.
Yes.
And when the season finished, I went back to London, and the company just opened up a bar in Australia, and I didn't want to leave because I'd met Tom, and I was like, no, this is great. So I actually left that company and went to go and work for another company. But the opportunities there weren't as great, and there wasn't as much room for me to grow. And so at the end of the year, I turned around and I was like, Tom, I'm going to go to Australia. I want to go and explore the bar scene out there, because I'd spent a bit of time there a couple of years previously and thought it was a wonderful industry scene over here. And he said, okay, I'll come with you. So
Is Tom Australian as well? Or
no,
English
Tom's
as well?
English.
Yeah.
So I dragged him to the other side of the world.
Yeah.
He'd had a lot more experience than me at this point. He's 7 years older than me. That one's for you, Tommy. And he'd been working in the industry a lot longer than me, and been in a higher position than me a lot longer.
Yes.
And so he'd been wanting to do his own thing for absolutely ages, and I kind of felt that 2 years of doing this, I was capable of doing it myself as well. We came over here with a vision to open our own thing, for sure, but didn't want to just move overseas and open something without kind of really, A, picking where we wanted to live, B, knowing the industry, knowing where the gaps in the market were. And so we moved to Brisbane by accident. It was a friend's birthday. We actually went to go and stay with my dad in Tenterfield when we first got here.
My grandpa's from Tenterfield.
Oh, really?
Actually, yeah. Yeah, that is a very small world.
Yeah, it is. Whereabouts?
Corodulla. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Probably. Let's hope so. No pressure.
That's crazy. Maybe they're neighbours.
Maybe.
That's
hilarious.
he's not around anymore.
Well,
But
neither is my dad, but there you go. They're definitely neighbours now.
they would have been friends. Yeah, maybe. Oh, that's crazy. Hey,
It's strange.
there you go, listeners. This is coming out straight on the episode.
So we moved to Tenterfield initially, and then came up here for Sean Forsyth's birthday, actually.
He's been on the show too.
Oh, has he?
Yep.
That wonderful speaking voice, that man. It's beautiful.
He's now Brown Foreman.
He is. So he's been one of my very good friends, for him and his wife, actually. I met them back in England 14 years ago. We all worked for the same company back then, actually.
Right.
So we came up here to celebrate his birthday, and then kind of fell into jobs, and actually really liked it up here. You know, Tom felt like he was in Australia because it was warm. He saw kangaroos. He was very happy about it.
You do in Tenterfield, that's for sure.
You do in Tenterfield, yes. Yes, you definitely do.
That's northern New South Wales, though.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But you said Brisbane. The weather's obviously warmer than in the UK.
A lot warmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when we first came here, we went to Melbourne. He just kind of, so I feel like I'm in the UK. Like,
Yeah.
it's cold and it's basically a new London. So he loved it up here. We fell into jobs and we had friends up here, which was great. So yeah, just sort of fell into the Brisbane lifestyle. Worked for about a year. I worked for a gentleman called Andrew Bachiro, who owns the Gresham and Libertine. I actually worked at Libertine when it first opened. We both did. Worked for him for just over a year, and then decided we were going to give it a go. So we found a site and opened Canvas with Marco and Emily. So.
Which is actually where I am at the moment.
Oh, really?
I'm working in Canvas. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, crazy.
That's so I love
small
what the
world.
boys have done with that place. It's so good. It's really nice to see. I've never set foot in a venue that we've sold. Never. But Canvas, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I actually can't. I feel like it's like giving away a child and then like
Meeting
trying
that
to
child
hang out
again.
with them again.
Yeah. Years
I can't
later.
do it. But
Okay.
I've walked past Canvas a few times because I often go down to that stretch store and look in. I hear about the progress and the direction they've gone and what they've done with Electric Avenue.
Yeah.
And I think they're great boys, and it's really nice to see a venue that you've put your heart and soul into taken in really good directions.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about even the process of selling a business? So how do you go about that process for anyone who doesn't know? Some listeners will have had experience with this, and maybe if you can provide some insights for those listeners as well, and people who haven't started a venue and want to think about something down the track.
I mean, it's funny because a lot of people do say, because we've now had 6 venues and a catering company, and we've sold 3 of them. But we've never opened a venue with a view to sell it. That's never been the intention, to sort of build something up and sell it on. It's always come to a point where we felt that it's necessary. So Canvas, tiny little bar, 4 owners. Marco, phenomenal, you know him obviously, phenomenal guy in the drinks industry. But very small little venue. We owned it, the 4 of us together, for 4 years. And it just kind of got to a point where there was no more that any of us could do for the bar, and the bar really couldn't do much else for us. You know, we were very lucky with our timing opening it. It was one of the first small bar licenses to be issued in Queensland. So we jumped on that, and people went crazy for it, and we won awards, and it was instantly recognised nationally, which was wonderful. But it kind of got to a point where, in order to develop it further, we needed to take it in a different direction, but we didn't really want to take it in a different direction because it had kind of done so much for us as it was. And yeah, it just, you know, there was an opportunity for Tom and I to go and do public, and Marco and Emily had been presented the opportunity of Papa Jack, so it was a natural progression, it was a natural thing. So we sold that and moved on to our different projects. Public, Tom and I owned for 4.5 years. We had another business partner involved with that. Brisbane's a very sort of fast moving industry, and I think it got to a point where there was options coming our way to sell the venue. We weren't sure if you know what Brisbane's like, it kind of surges and then it kind of plateaus and
But
then
some
it
of our
surges.
listeners don't, so.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Brisbane's gone through, it's been getting there for about a decade now. And it goes through these incredible surges of just, you know, really innovative and exciting things opening up, and then suddenly a whole bunch of things will shut down and it feels like it plateaus, and it's always sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so public, an opportunity came along to sell it at a time where, you know, we felt that the industry might have been slowing down a little bit, especially for higher end dining, I suppose. And so we took the opportunity, and there was never a view to get out of public, but it was just, you know, again, timing. Then we had London Fields, and London Fields we ended up selling, regrettably, but we had to at the time because there was a falling out with our business partner, which I won't go into detail about. You know, we had to let that go after only a year of owning it, and so that wasn't ideal. You know, there was a monetary value lost there, and a little bit of pride as well, I suppose. But it is what it is, and you learn from situations like that. And you know, we let that go and focused on Red Hook and Copper, which we still have. It's, as much as we've now expanded overseas and done our first venue overseas, it's very good to kind of still have a foot in the door here, I suppose. You know, this is where we've cemented our reputation, and this is, well, at the moment, it's where we can earn some money, because neither of us are legal to earn a wage in America at the moment, which is a whole different kettle of fish.
So with regards, I know that you said you don't want to go into too much about business partners specifically. So if we keep it on a sort of a more surface level discussion, how do you know if a business partner is going to be right?
Well, there's a question for you. It's very difficult, and I think this has really put Tom and I on the back foot, and we're super cautious about getting anyone else involved now, because Tom had known this person for 17 years, and for 3 years we thought everything was wonderful between us, and it was perfectly a perfect balance of, you know, him getting financially involved and us being able to run the show, and it worked really well. So it came as a huge shock to us that things went wrong. In terms of choosing the right business partner, I think you never know what situations, what high pressure situations are going to bring out in terms of character traits in a human. So I think the best thing to do is, you know, first and foremost, find someone that's got the same vision as you. That's the most important thing. They've got to have the same sort of morals and fundamental guidelines to what it is they want to achieve from a venue. But then the most important thing you can do, and this is where we went wrong, was we didn't have a strong enough shareholders agreement in place. The second that all of this is documented and there's a legal document that says this, this and this, get out clauses, exit strategies, it makes everything so much easier. So I think, you know, as much as it's a shame, because you do want to kind of pick someone that's going to be your lifelong buddy, you need to make everything sort of very legalized and just make sure that there's, you know, there's structure in place.
Yes. Because I've worked a lot with startups. I've started my own businesses and worked a lot with other startups, and been in that sort of community for a while now. I've learned that you have to build everything initially on trust anyway, because it doesn't matter what contracts are in place. If someone wants to screw you, they're going to screw you.
That's true.
So ultimately, you have to trust whoever you're working with, and it's very hard to know whether you can trust them.
I think that can also be your downfall, is letting yourself trust someone too much, and that was fundamentally where we went wrong.
Exactly. So you could trust someone too quickly or too slowly.
Yeah, it's a very, very delicate situation, you know, and I think that's why, as I mentioned, Tom and I were partners as well as business partners. And one of the reasons why we've decided to stick at it after, you know, going our separate ways is because we trust each other. You know, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he's 100% trustworthy, and likewise for him. And we work well together, and I know how hard that is to find in this industry. So it wasn't easy at first, but we worked through it. And, you know, I'd love to get someone on board in terms of maybe like investment or something like that, but I don't think we'd ever take on another business partner.
So, but there would still ultimately be a partner, but not an operational
Not operational,
partner.
and it's a lot harder to be mischievous when you're not physically on site.
Yeah.
So,
tell us a bit about going overseas and even trying to navigate cultural differences and executing a venue in a different country.
Differences. It's just England, Australia, and America. It's all the same, but different accents.
It's all Western, but there's still idiosyncrasies within the cultures.
No, there are, definitely. And I mean, the business and taxation laws and legalities behind everything is so totally different.
Yes.
You don't realise how different it is because, as you mentioned, it's all Western. You think there'd be some sort of correlations, but it's been challenging. But, you know, challenges are what keeps this exciting for us, I suppose. I don't know why we keep jumping around from country to country. We're a nomad at heart, but I think this will probably be the last time we do jump. Sorry, Tom, but Tom will be 40 this year and I'm not getting any younger. So I think, you know, uprooting our entire lives again, moving country is probably getting a bit old now.
Well, I mean, you've been across 3, so I mean, 4. You're in Ibiza as well.
Yeah,
so.
and France, so 5.
Yeah, there you
but
go.
I mean, I think, you know, my roots are my mum and my brother and sister are in London. My younger brother and my stepmother are in Australia, and, you know, I'm now based in LA. And I think, you know, I'd love to have venues across all 3 of those at some point. But I think actually going out and trying a whole new culture again has just kind of reached its limit.
So how did you navigate those differences? And you mentioned legal when I asked the question.
Yeah.
So does that mean that you think that the largest problem or difficulty or struggle in doing that is actually the legal framework? And do you need to have a solicitor who is based in that country? Would you suggest having someone?
I'd 100% suggest that. And also speaking to people before you go. You know, not being afraid to grab a tape recorder or a fancy microphone and ask someone for a minute of their time and sit down and ask them as many questions as you can. Speak to the people that are around you.
You could even start a podcast on that.
You could.
There you go.
There you go.
Come talk to me if you'd like to do that.
Wonder, you can have my idea. I'm terrible at these things. But yeah, I think, you know, never be afraid to ask as many questions as you possibly can. Use your contacts. This industry that we're in is so small on a global scale. You know, no matter what, you're going to know someone in that industry, in that country, through someone in your own country. Use those connections, use those networks, ask as many questions as you can. Those people are going to know, you know, someone that can suggest a lawyer, someone that can suggest an accountant, that, you know, knows about the area you're looking at opening up. Just talk as much as you possibly can. One thing I've really, really noticed in America, which I've loved, because normally Tom and I have opened every venue together, but given that we've still got venues in operation here, I've been over there on my own quite a lot. And one thing that I've really loved about America is there's no tall poppy syndrome. Everyone is so excited to help you on your journey. They, you know, and it's over helpful at times. You're like, just shut up. But it's so nice how supportive everyone is, and, you know, the connections and networks that you make just like that. It's great.
Like being a millennial, it's been so handy having access to that growing up through the industry.
Yeah.
And I follow a lot of people in the States, and I think that rubs off on me a bit. Maybe that comes across in sort of the culture and brand that I emit, but that's something that I definitely take away from the States.
Yeah.
And so I ignore anything around tall poppy syndrome because I'm 100% behind anyone who wants to go out and do something cool. Like, in my mind, there's no competition. It's all, we're doing this together.
Yeah.
If you want to help push the industry forward, I'm totally behind you. Yeah.
No, it's funny. I was trying to explain tall poppy syndrome to an American the other day, and they just didn't get it. I was like, it's very bizarre.
Yeah, I've talked to a few about it on our Facebook calls. I do a lot of Facebook calls with people in the States. And actually, Tony Robbins even mentioned it when he came here recently.
Yeah.
I got to see Tony Robbins, which was incredible.
That's cool.
And obviously, to Australians listening, you're going to know exactly what tall poppy syndrome is. But if you're overseas and you're listening to this, we're talking about tall poppy syndrome, which is effectively when you start to get some success, and people are very supportive initially.
And to your face.
And then when you get to start get a bit of success, they
Look at a way
start to chop you
cut you
down.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep you in line with everybody else.
Yeah.
What do you believe is the best way to deal with that? I'll
Just
come with
be
my answer
humble.
after.
That's, you need to keep people on your side. And, there's always going to be people that don't want you to succeed, because that's the nature of being human, I suppose. And some people are like that. They're bitter, they're jealous. But just be humble and do your job well and be good people. That's all you can do. If you're good people and you look after the people around you, 90% of the time they're going to look after you.
I think that's a great answer.
Thank you.
I think we just have to ignore the fact that people want to chop us down.
It's a thin line between, you don't want to make enemies.
No.
There's no point. So you've got to just, you've got to...
Especially with a small industry and you can burn bridges.
Such a small industry.
I think it's just about being courageous. So
You do.
moving in the face of fear.
Yeah, and you've got to believe in yourself, but at the same time, like I said, being humble is the most important thing. Just do what you do, but don't be a knob about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if because the thing is, if someone's trying to cut you down and you're there being arrogant and conceited and just doing what you do and not reacting to situations or people around you, then it's only going to fuel them further. So just like I said, be good people and do what you do well, and people that are trying to chop you down eventually just going to cut their own nose despite their face. So.
Bonnie, I want to ask you, what are you learning about or exploring at the moment?
American taxation laws. They're taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
I've actually got to go to a California tax seminar next week, which I'm not looking forward
And
to.
American tax laws have changed recently too.
God.
Trump's changed them.
They change all the time.
We changed them big time though, didn't he? With
Yes.
company tax laws. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So that's it. I mean, everything I'm sort of finding challenging or facing at the moment is to do with new legislation in America. It's been very consuming. Not saying it's not good. Like, I love
Just different.
learning.
Yeah.
And my brain has not worked this hard in a long time. And also, labour laws over there are exceptionally different. The tipping system, the culture, and how often they get breaks, and it's pretty full on. But I'm enjoying it. It's wonderful. So yeah, really just learning about how everything runs over there has been.
How
very
can someone
fascinating.
learn about something like that?
I mean, everyone always says the best thing to do is just do it. But again, speaking to people, like I said, this is such a small network. If anyone wants to ask any questions about American
Yeah,
tax,
please.
I'm happy to help. But yeah, just asking questions, and as you mentioned, we have so much access to the internet and things like that, and podcasts and God knows what. I mean, maybe you should do a podcast on American tax.
Yep.
No, don't.
We
Listen to
could.
it.
Some people might. But I mean, we could do. I've started doing from today. So this episode will be coming out in a few months' time. But as of today, I actually just launched. When you're listening to this, you'll go, aha! Just launched Convos with Hospos, which is the panel discussions on controversial industry topics.
Yeah.
That's something we've just launched today, which will be taking place every month in the coming
exciting.
months. We'll see where that's at by the time this episode is released. But be interesting looking back on that. And
Yeah,
if
for
you're
sure.
listening, I hope that we're still going with those events. Which would be good. But we might do a legal panel.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. Have a solicitor talk about those things. But that's for outside of the recording. You're learning about tax law, obviously asking people, learning about the legislation, reading the legislation yourself. And you've recommended that people find solicitors in the local area.
I do think there's so much variation in law from country to country, from state to state in America. I just advise finding a local bookkeeper, local accountant, local attorneys. I think that's crucial. Definitely 100%. The more front of house operation, managers and bartenders, that's more of a sort of global network of same standards and knowledge and everything. But yeah, when it comes to the nitty gritty legislation, I highly recommend using local people and people that have been recommended to you.
Yes.
For sure.
What innovations or innovative techniques have you seen take place in the industry?
Wow, that's a big question.
I like to ask the big questions.
I mean,
It's kind of what I do on the
Yeah.
show.
I mean, I've been through so many different sort of trends or phases over the past 12 years in the industry, going from, starting off with that mad ice carving craze that everyone went through.
Oh,
which
yeah.
was beautiful, but it was a complete waste of money. But it was wonderful at the time. It got everyone talking. And, I know a few people have kept that going and they still do it well. And they found a much more sort of economically viable way of having beautiful, giant icebergs in their restaurants and bars and carving.
Yeah, and then they melt.
And they do. It was wonderful. Like, I used to get really excited every day when the big block of ice was dropped off at canvas, and the boys would get their tools out and start chopping it up, and yeah, it was great. But yeah, it cost us quite a bit of money.
So what other things I can sort of see from what you're thinking there? It's about technical. It's actually sort of a midway between. Some people give a very technical answer where they're like, they talk about maybe if they're a bartender, they talk about the drinks, or if they're in food.
Are you talking not about trends and stuff, more about?
So about trends and innovations, but so there's the technical level in terms of the product itself and maybe how the service is provided, and then there's that your answer, which is like a midway between that and the third one, which is macro, technological, really big sweeping technological innovations like social media and how food's being delivered, or things like this,
like Uber Eats,
and that's obviously a topic of discussion at the moment, but might not be relevant in 5 or 10 years. So if someone listens back to this show in 5 or 10 years, that might not be relevant. So I try to keep a lot of what we talk about timeless, but then obviously talking about experiences and insights from guests as well. So I'd love to know what you've seen in the industry that's really come through that you think will be important in the future.
Okay, no, I get that. I guess the most sort of topical thing for that question right now would be sustainability within the bar industry, and I think that's something that we've seen a giant move towards that over the past couple of years. I was lucky enough to be involved in the 42 Below Earth Cup. I was one of the judges for that, which was an incredible program over in New Zealand. Lots of fun, but also very educational. And just watching bars put some of those practices into place, because if we don't have a planet, none of us are going to have bars. So I think this is something, if you're discussing this in 5, 10, 15 years time, it's still going to be very topical then. And it's been really interesting learning about how to be sustainable and reducing your landfill waste, and swapping out certain products in your bar, and using citrus to be your cleaning products rather than using chemicals and throwing away all your lemon rinds. And that to me is probably the most innovative bartending, restaurant, hospitality practice that there is at the moment, and something that I can definitely see growing and really changing the face of our industry moving forward.
Obviously you're passionate about that then. What about, are there any other innovations that you want to take place in the industry?
God, lots. Get rid of staff? No, I'm joking. Edit that.
It's actually an interesting answer though.
No, but I mean, your staff are what make you. I really believe that. I think, your staff come first, and then your customers, and then everything else. Your staff, their personalities and their attention to detail, or lack of, are what make or break someone's experience with you. God, I love them, but they can be a pain in the ass sometimes. But, they really do make your venue. You can make it as pretty as you want, but unless you've got good people working for you, then, the rest is all sort of superfluous. It's just, they are also the bane of a lot of the heartache that comes with this industry, managing breaks and hours and sick days, and people that don't take our industry seriously and just see it as a sort of part-time hobby, I guess. So no, I'd never get rid of my staff.
How
don't
do you
see them
vet?
taken over by robots or anything?
I mean, that will happen in some spaces, and people will be made redundant, and that's just how some
the nature of the beast.
Pockets of the industry are going to move. How do you vet for good staff, and what do you think the good staff of the future will look like?
As you said, technology is advancing so quickly that that raw skill level is going to become less and less important. I feel, as long as their attitude's good, and they're keen, and they've got common sense, and they can smile through a situation. To me, those are the most important things. If you've got good chat, you're passionate, you're keen, the rest of the skill, unless you're a complete dummy, can be taught, and they've got to want to, better themselves as well. So as long as, they're working for people that have a good training program in place and they want to learn and move forward, then I think, as long as they're happy people, it's what you need.
You've obviously, you said 6 venues and a catering company. How do you go about designing a new business? So this is a very big question as well. So it's in 3 parts. The first is how you get into a creative state. The second is how you entertain that idea once you've developed had the spark. And the third is how you execute it. So however you'd like to focus on the answer to that question,
I guess Tom and I, we've got this catalogue of different ideas that we have come up with at the most random of times. Either we've been sitting down and brainstorming, or just been like watching a TV show and one of us have just said something, or being out and about in the industry and seeing, certain elements of different venues we've been in that would work well combined, or drunken nights out, God, I don't know, anything. And so we've been cataloguing these for 12 years now. So that's sort of where our concept base comes from, is, just this list that we've got going. The next step is, I suppose, when we're ready to do a new venue, we start looking for venues. And for us, it's very much about the character and the placement of that, that venue. So we'll find the site, and then we'll kind of think about our list. Most of the time, we both think of exactly the same concept for exactly the same. We're so in sync on that sort of thing. So then we know that concept's going to work at that site. So then we start doing the deal and negotiating the lease and doing all of that. And, most of the time that takes a good few months. So in that time, we get together with our creatives, so our graphic designers. We'll talk them through our concept. Graphic design team, our build and design team, our friends and our family, because they know us and they know our style, and they've become foodies and whinies if they weren't so in their own right beforehand. We keep the conversation very open amongst our trusted friends. Again, that tall poppy syndrome, you don't want to give too much away. As we're negotiating the lease, that gives us the time and opportunity to start really working on the concept. And, most of our venues now, even at Canvas, but we didn't have a chef, but most of our venues have required a chef. And that's probably, the part that needs the most work in the build up to opening. So the first thing we'll do is start trying to recruit a chef. When we have candidates, we'll always do up a sort of concept menu for them, for our vision and our direction for where we want to go, and we'll get them to come in and cook for us. They'll come in, they'll cook sort of similar things off this menu we've presented them with, and we've given them sort of a business direction plan. And then we'll also say to them, also bring what you want to cook as if you were cooking for your friends and family, and they're coming around to your house for a night out. And then we'll narrow it down and we'll find the chef that we want to work with. And then there's a lot of time and energy that goes into working with them to help them understand your concept, but also enable them to have the freedom of creativity, because they're artists. Then once we've got the kitchen side of things sorted, the design and build starting to happen. We've been working with in Australia, it's different overseas, but we've been working with our design and build team, graphic design and interior design team, for ages now. So they get us, and all we need to do is kind of explain the concept to them, and they come back to us, and 99% of the time we're like, yeah, perfect, you guys nailed it. It's really good. And then as the build's happening and the kitchen's all coming together, you start hiring your front of house team. And Tom and I, again, it's different in America because Tom and I can't actually physically operate the business. We're allowed to own it, but until you become a legal resident or citizen, you're not allowed to operate the venue. So it's been very different for us feeding into a management team. Over here, we've always been the management team to start off with, while we've trained people up underneath us. And when we feel that they're at a level where we need them to be, we've handed over and then focused on our next project.
Obviously, you've thought about things like taking other Australians over who...
Absolutely.
So who you've worked with and have trained.
Yeah.
So how are you going about even navigating that?
We had a consultant chef for us over in LA who was fantastic. Australian girl, Alison, she's wonderful. So we hired her and her team for the first 3 months of conceptualization over there. And then she hired a team for us. She has her own amazing projects going over there. So unfortunately, we didn't get to keep her full time, but she hired our amazing chef that we have now. It was very different for us, actually, when we hired in our management team. They've been fantastic, wonderful girls. It's been a lot easier than I thought it would be. I was really quite daunted by the fact that we weren't able to work in the business and build the team around us, but they've been great. We've been very, very lucky, but moving forward, there's a shortage of chefs over in America, for sure. And so, there's some chefs here that I've worked with that I'd love to take over there, and they are on the list that makes them special enough to get into the country. So, no, definitely something we've thought about for sure.
So that's obviously taught you skills that you wouldn't have been forced to learn otherwise, having to go through training people without actually having to physically be doing it to train them, which is very cool too. So you'd be able to implement something in another country, possibly. There's who knows what's on the cards, but yeah, you may very well stay within the 3/5 that you're in.
Maybe. We'll see.
I want to ask you 2 more questions.
Yes.
The first is, what is your biggest challenge right now
Not having Tom there with me is really hard, to be honest with you. Like I said, we work so well together. We know exactly where our strengths are. You know, we very rarely step on each other's toes. He does his jobs, I do my jobs. And we've been separated by quite a few thousand miles. And as much as technology keeps us connected and whatnot, there's a time difference, which proves to be very difficult. There's a small window in the afternoon for me over there that I get to sort of annoy Tom with all my questions for a good couple of hours. It's been very challenging doing everything, and he's had to do everything here. So that's been really, really hard. It's nice to know that I can survive, even if it's just doing it on my own. But yeah, it's been really hard without sort of my partner in crime there with me, to be honest.
My last question for you, Bonnie, is what is the next step for Bonnie Shearston?
I think it's what's the next step for our company. It's not me. We both have lots of plans to still, grow. I hate the word, but grow the empire, I suppose, over in America. Like I said, we don't want to lose our hold on Brisbane at all. It's great having a foot in the door here, and we have a really good team holding things together for us over here. But there's so much excitement and opportunity over in America. There's so many people. It's exciting, and I want to keep doing things over there. As soon as Tom can come over, and we can really sort of regroup and sort of get Pollen to exactly where it needs to be. We've just been granted our beer and wine license, so we need to get that whole alcohol side of things moving. It's very complex over there. Then we'd love to look at, doing a couple more things over there. Eventually, I'd love to have something in Australia, something in London, something in America, so I can base myself in the centre in America and, float to both my homes as and when I choose. But yeah, I think Tom and I would really like to embark on doing a couple more things over there. It's a great country, and it's a wonderful state, California, so it's exciting.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thank
it's
you for
been
having me.
incredibly insightful.
Good, I'm glad, and I didn't swear.
The show today was produced by Angus Brennan. If you'd like to know more about hospopreneurs, for advice, insights, and extra content, find us at hospopreneurs.com. Thanks for listening.